So let's kick off with this session with Renaud Selmès, our CTO at BVR. So this is a conversation between friends based on a lot of discussions we've had over the last years together. And obviously, it looks like everybody we have on the call right now are super good friends. So so this is going to be a particularly fun version of On the Offense, since we've all had conversations together about the topic, and I'll let Renaud introduce himself very quickly just to kick this off in a second. But I think the obviously my perspective here is we've been lucky enough to have Renaud as a CTO, which gives us firepower beyond what a small company would normally have. And as a result, we've been able to do a bunch of things that I never would have considered doing on my own. So strategically, it's opened up a lot of options, and we've managed to do it without breaking the bank. So I thought, as a strategy issue, trying to figure out in a market that increasingly requires capitalization and theoretically would put smaller information companies at a disadvantage, this seemed like a great chance to talk about ways we can fight back, and in fact, in many ways, outcompete, which I think Renaud has allowed us to do. So technology's with us. It costs us a lot. We need it. Yeah, it's sort of like a drug, I guess you could say. And the best thing to do is adapt our strategies so we know what we're doing, so we don't waste money. And I think this session today will help with it. So thank you everyone for joining in. So I will start, Renaud, if you don't mind. Many of the people on this call know you, obviously, but just a real quick, super quick background on how you ended up stuck with Lucretia and me at BVR.
Well, really briefly, I'm going to start by saying that I was more destined to become an investment banker than, based on my education, than chief technology officer. But I started in the financial information industry because I was fresh off the boat, needed a job, and thank God never became a bankster. So at the beginning, I was more of a content guy, and that taught me the importance of good quality data, as well as the importance of good structured data, which is mostly driven by the use case or how the data is consumed. So you have to have a good understanding of the industry that data pertains with and the industry that data is consumed by. Then and only then, the importance of technology is crucial to structure, retrieve, and display the data to the end consumer.
Yep.
So I learned that through my stints at mostly FactSet, where I spent 12 years, and started in content, developing content, and moved into product development role toward the end of my career there. And it's only when I started my company, XData, that I became more involved in technology. That led me to consult for a natural language generation software company. And that gig confirmed the importance for me of data structure, as all the failed projects that I worked on were related to failure on the client part due to poor data structure. Where is it? Repository. In some cases, they didn't even know where it was. And we were already fully engaged in the consulting job. So it's the cart before the horse, so to speak, where technology is not your savior. That's all I want to say. It's a means to an end. It's important. It's a delivery mechanism, right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, one of the interesting things about your history at FactSet, and I know many of you on this call know this because I've discussed, I think Renaud's the only person at BVR as I always say, with a Fortune 500 career history. So his resume is far more impressive than mine, at least anyway. But the most, I don't know, I think probably most of you know FactSet. It's one of the largest financial data companies, but Renaud, I didn't know this until I met Renaud. When FactSet started, they just wanted to be essentially a software company. So their idea was build the software to deliver data, and then people would come to them and they'd license the data and distribute it. By the time Renaud left, they completely switched strategy to being a content company using their own platform. So going through those iterations, any reflections on that? Because I think that's an informative part of your background, Renaud.
I mean, most definitely, you know, you have the culture shock of technology and content, and it's a difficult transition. I mean, when I started there, I think we had about 10 engineers for one content person, and even so, they were heavily, and they still are heavily technology oriented. You know, they still to this day have technological debt, and that's something that you know, whether small or big companies, we're all facing. And it's a tough thing. You need to tackle those before they become an issue. Otherwise, they drag on and on for years, and it becomes more painful as time goes by.
Yeah, that's certainly for everyone on the call. I mean, it's still an ongoing issue, but since when Renaud came in, we essentially had 100% technology debt, partially because the founder of the company had sort of self-written software. The people who had done that early work had done it in Access, which is now, you know, outmoded, and they had all disappeared. So, so I would say, as far as strategies, you know, one thing is investing in a common technological platform, you know, is one of the first steps that empowers everything else. That's made every decision we've made since then easier.
And often, sorry, often I'd like to say that you know, it's difficult to justify in the moment that you're going to have technical debt and why you should put money in order to avoid that. It's something that you realize once it becomes technological debt. So you have to install a culture of revising your technology every now and then, reviewing your code, what is the new technology out there, and eventually splurge into new technology and develop applications side by side, and do the transition that way. I know that FactSet is still using servers that are probably 25 years old, and they're cycling through CTOs every now and then to tackle that problem. It was an issue when I joined, and it's still an issue to this day. So it's not only small companies.
Well, that leads into a second area, which obviously, I mean, we started this call, those who were on early, joking about Amazon, which is sort of in the content business in various ways, and has tens of thousands of engineers and content developers. So you think at some point we should just give up. But ironically, that FactSet story, I think, is one of the reasons you've succeeded so well at BVR and a smaller company, environment because you could fix the technological debt, get us on to sort of the latest technology, and that made us kind of sexy and appealing to people we wanted to hire, which FactSet's, many of them we brought from FactSet, or you brought from FactSet, because they were bored, literally. Do you want to talk about that a little bit as a competitive advantage?
Sure. I mean, as a small company, you're more nimble. You don't have to go through up the chain of command, and there's less politics involved.
Yeah.
So that's what makes the difference, I think. And my experience with BVR is that you and Lucretia, really trusted me to steer things in a certain way, and the way we introduced the new technology is by developing new product at first, so that enabled us to showcase the technology and what you could do, compare it to the technology that we're using for your legacy products, and then switch and upgrade those products with the new technology.
That's exactly. Yeah. That I think many of you on the call, the first product was the acronym was FORS, and many of you know that it didn't sell in the marketplace as well as we hoped, but it did sell enough to kind of support. It sort of paid for the building the technology, and now I'd literally say a lot of the work has been retrofitting that development we did on the new product back to the legacy products, as Renaud just said. So it was kind of a way to fund a bunch of development to move to a new generation. Could you, just from a technical point of view, can you just do kind of the tech stack thing a little bit, like generally what you're working in now? And obviously this isn't a technology session, but it's important again because it's helped you attract really good people to help us.
Yes. So basically, we're using Node.js and Angular. Node.js is an open source server environment. One of the thing is it's open source, so it's free. So it runs on various platforms: Windows, Linux, Mac, and Unix. And it has lots of libraries developed by the community. So Node.js was much more performant when it comes to memory, much more efficient. And Angular is as well open source. It's a web application framework to develop scalable and dynamic web applications. The chance that we had is that most of our products are databases, and what you do with a database is you screen, you return a result. So we were able to develop a new product using this technology, and that gave us a roadmap to upgrade the products and the flagship products that were selling great.
Yeah. Well, just before we get into how you effectively solve these problems as CTO, I just want to spend just another minute on kind of the common problems that we're all struggling against. One of which is, the simple HR problem of, relative lack of tech staff, and that, if they don't get hired by Microsoft or Amazon, or someone else, in many cases they're not very good, I mean, and you've run into some of that, Renaud. I know, like high salaries, no experience kind of work. Just, if you're dealing with the domestic market, any.
Yeah. So I think it depends what you're looking for and the skills you're looking for. Is it IT support, or is it developing an application, or is it maintaining your infrastructure? So it's three different scenarios, I guess. But yes, it's expensive in the sense that a software engineer in the US is around $120,000 a year, and it can be pretty prohibitive for a small company. I think it's worth the expense. When I started Xdata, for example, you always want to be partner with someone who has deep knowledge in technology. And that's what I had done when I started my company. I was more of the data product development guy, but I had an engineer who was Constantine, with whom we're working these days as well, with who was my partner in the venture. So and also it's do you need a generalist or do you need a specialist? Really, and for small companies that can be prohibitive.
Yeah, you literally, it's like Helen's on the call. We did a session a year ago about the fact that there are 15 marketing specialisms. So a smaller company that's trying to cover that needs to hire 15 experts, which may be impossible. So the result is frequently that you outsource to a trusted supplier like Helen's company, because you just can't get somebody. And the same thing is true here. Like, to do what Renaud's done, you need somebody who's an expert in user interface, on the whole API world for licensing, just the basic engineering and coding that you're talking about. The list goes on and on. So if you're getting intro level staff at 120,000 a year, you need 10 experts, which for some of us would knock out all of our profits for the next 10 years. So that's not a solution. So I want to get to how you solve this with BVR India. So I will say that I think the one other thing that's helped us hugely has just been the move towards cloud computing, because you don't have to be buying servers all the time. Do you want to do that for a small company? I think that's been a gift, so we can compete. Do you want to comment just on that level?
Sure. I mean, 20 years ago, you needed to buy your own server. That was expensive. You need to buy software. Nowadays, you have cloud computing, you have open source softwares. So the barrier of entry is much reduced when it comes to that. You can, there's Amazon Web Services. Everything is integrated. There's so much you can dream of. It's mind-boggling. But the barrier of entry is more on the staff, so to speak, and the cost that it represents, and the risk that hiring someone represents. When I started at BVR, I've seen a question: you had Nathan who was doing IT support and infrastructure maintenance, and consultant Eric was working on new projects.
Yep.
And helping along.
Yep.
So when you hired me, I brought in Constantine, with whom I was working before as a consultant, and he had his connections as well. So we tapped into that. And this is how we were able to develop BVR India. We already, thanks to my experience at FactSet, when I joined FactSet in 2005, we offshored a lot of content and engineering to India, and I went through that whole process. So I had that experience of offshoring tasks and see how how it worked. But so most of the time, for the story, when I started at FactSet, we were gaining market shares because Thomson was in India, and a lot of things and their data was not good. So we made a lot of money by having a really good quality data and a clean software. But then, we decided to go there. So to me, it was a bit counterintuitive. It turns out that people in India can do awesome work. It depends on the infrastructure within which they operate. And you have to be very mindful of that. So that's what led us to create BVR India, really, because we wanted to control that and also retain, the knowledge and the IP. And basically, you should consider a hire as an investment, and so we were able to, thanks to my connections, we were able to create BVR India, and we now have 6 people there, 4 in content, and 2 engineers who are really good engineers, and one is better when it comes to understand workflow and the use case and developing application, and the other one is a whiz when it comes to developing infrastructure to support those products.
And websites.
That's how we did that.
Can I just to I'll try to summarize to wrap up, because so we can open up to questions as we usually do, and there are a bunch of good ones. But I like Stephanie's question about how many people, I think Renaud just answered, but we've been able to succeed in this model, and I think Renaud has sort of, as is the case with On the Offense all the time, if people want to talk to Renaud about how we did this afterwards, he has special expertise, and I can't underestimate the fact that I think FactSet literally had 300 or 400 people, or maybe even more, working in India. Renaud and Constantine knew all of them and knew who was the best. So literally, Renaud said several times that we got the very best of the staff, so we knew what we were getting when we hired them, which is an extraordinary asset. So if anyone's thinking of doing Indian offshoring, check with Renaud. he's a good resource on this subject. But I'll just quickly summarize that. Obviously, we have Salesforce, so we have software as a service in place. We use multi-pub. So I'm not suggesting that we all. I think most of us would agree. None of us want to rewrite that kind of software. We just want to support it and make sure it's customized to exactly what we need. So most of the work we've been doing is on the product development side with BVR India. And Renaud and I have talked a lot about this, but for the sake of this discussion, I'll shorthand that into, for all of us, those strategies have huge advantages on, managing costs and knowing what you're getting and being relatively certain that things would work. But they also have huge risks attached to them. You don't control the IP. Any custom work you do may be lost. And conversely, they can also be extraordinarily expensive. So I would just say fitting in an in-house technology function for a small company sort of fits into the larger strategy, I guess I would say. So just to wrap up, could you just talk a little bit about what you built for us in India as an example? And again, our tech costs are probably 10.5–11%, plus or minus, and yet we have, because of this offshoring thing, we have access to these incredibly talented people. So just a little bit about how you did it with Sagient and the mechanics, in case people are interested in that, and then we'll go to the questions, so people understand what you did and what the resource is.
Absolutely. So basically, you have, if you're considering offshoring stuff to India, or I should preface that it depends what you want to do, because there's other centers that might be more appealing to you than India. We happen to do that in India because we had the network over there already, thanks to our experience. But for example, Colombia is it's a place that you don't hear about often, besides drug cartels, but they're very well educated. They speak very well English, and there's really good engineers there, and it's on the same time zone as the US. So we happened to do that in India because we had we knew people on the ground. And when you know people on the ground, when we started offshoring tasks to India, I think we started maybe with 300 people, but by the time I left, we had 5,000 people there. So, and when I had started at FactSet, we were only 500 people within the company globally. So just to give you an idea, but it gives you price discovery when you have a network and you know people on the ground. So it's very important because they see you come as a US, okay, I can jack up the price. And so you have to trust people, not only how to set up a structure and how much it costs, or how much hiring someone would cost. And cost varies greatly between if you would hire someone for content development or data entry and an engineer. So you have two options: either you set up your own structure, or you hire someone through an already existing structure there that will just bill you on a monthly basis. And I shopped around and tell you the truth, I looked at an American company that was offering services to set up a structure in India and how much it cost. Then I looked at hiring someone via a pre-existing structure in India, and then using a local service provider to set up a structure in India. Okay, prices varied greatly, and so if you decide to go through a pre-existing structure that will hire the person for you, it's difficult to have control over who gets hired, and it will generally, depending on how many people you need, but the more people you have, the less it will cost you. Per employee. So, and at the time we were looking to hire only one person, one engineer, and it was prohibitive for us. And it turned out to be more expensive than using a local service provider. So I was lucky to find Sagent through a referral of the guy who had headed FactSet India for some time. So I knew these guys were trustworthy, and we used them to create BVR India. There again, you have different choices. Either you can create the company from the ground up. It takes some time because there's a lot of paperwork. India loves paperwork, and it can become overwhelming at times. Or we decided they had a pre-existing structure that basically we bought the shares of and we renamed it. And that was the most cost effective in terms of time and money we spent. And we had pre-negotiated basically services that they would provide, such as payroll and everything compliance related, filing the annual reports and things like that, and paying taxes.
So hopefully that's a basic structure description. And I would say, having built the structure, those of you on the call, again, maybe you can borrow our structure if you're looking for more resources, or, again, talk to Renaud about that. But we do actually have a formal corporate structure on the ground in India, and it's helped us on the content side, and immensely, because where we suddenly needed more people to fill a gap or something like that, again, particularly because Renaud knows all these people over there, he can kind of hire the people who are the most successful. So that's kind of that's having someone on the ground wherever you go, who actually knows the individuals involved. I think that was an essential advantage. One of the questions is just other places. There are a bunch of questions there. People, Stephanie mentioned the Philippines. John mentioned the Ukraine, which I'm on a board that has relocated 200 people to Poland from the Ukraine. They had their whole tech center in the Ukraine, which was expensive, but from a human rights point of view, it's what they what they wanted to do. And I don't, they've just run into a huge problem, which is the Ukrainian government is trying to demand that the military-age men repatriate themselves so they can serve mandatory military service. So I don't know, John, if you've run into that, but the point is geopolitical risk can be can definitely be a factor here. I guess sadly it can also be a factor in the U.S. the way we're going at this point. But who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? So that if any of you have any sort of technical questions about the legal structure that Renaud set up, we all know where he is. So you feel free to check in on that. Let me just go to some of the questions, because there are some interesting things, and maybe just because I know everyone on this call is interested in product development in particular, but when you first came in, you talked about the product development with FORS, the fairness, it's a fairness opinion database. Does the question was sort of about how we developed that idea, and I obviously there was an idea that Lucretia and I were interested in, but I think the idea was massively improved because Renaud had worked in financial data before. So I don't know how you describe it, Renaud. I feel like it was kind of mutual. You knew a lot about where the data was, what the problems were with it. And we had kind of the idea of the business problem we were trying to solve with the product. Do you want to, I hope I'm paraphrasing Matt's question. Matt, if you want to jump in there, if I butchered it, you could take the lead if you'd like.
No, but definitely. I mean, before you hired me, you hired me as a consultant to do some research on, okay, what's easily available data out there that would help our core market, or be able to branch out a little bit out of the core market. Mm-hmm. And that you immediately recognize that as okay, that's it. We can use that, and it would help our core market, and we might be able to branch out outside of the core market. So that's how we started that. But yeah, before you start any product development, you want to know what you're collecting, understand how it's structured, how you're going to structure it, and how you plan on consuming it. So who the end user is going to be. And we had some, I already had a database structure in mind. I knew, so we gained a lot of time thanks to that. And then, it was, we also started to collect the content while we were developing the application. So,
does that, Matt, does that kind of touch on your question?
Yeah, so the question really was sort of about from the business's perspective before Renaud was there. Did you have a product idea in mind that you thought, oh, let's bring Renaud in to build this? Or did you discover that together? It sounds like the consulting engagement before you brought him in was a big piece of that. So that sort of answered a lot of the question there. So
yeah. Do you want to it was hugely helpful to have like, and it's relatively rare, as all of you know, to have somebody who can understand the architecture of a huge platform, let's say, but also understand the value of content a little bit. So in that regard, Renaud's, he's also started his own business, a content company, and done both sides. So that combination of skills, was a gift for some, for someone the size of BVR, I guess. I might there are some questions just about hiring talent and things like that, which maybe Greg, do you want to jump in on that? But I would say that a lot of these markets, Helen's mentioned Serbia and Romania, which are very rich, in talent. There's an extraordinary amount of training, so there are specialists available. So Greg, do you want to jump in with your question about generalists?
Yeah, so given that it's hard to find tech talent, and that sometimes people have a need in a particular area, like I have a friend who's trying to hire somebody who's a specialist in Salesforce automation or something along those lines, and they've been months trying to find the right person. And I said, look, if you just hired somebody who was generally competent, they would have figured it out by now. So, is it better to wait around to get the specialist, or to find somebody who's just smart who can figure it out?
Yeah, I think it depends how pressing your problem is. But I think I'm more on the generalist side, because someone who has a general understanding will figure something out, and will see the big picture more so than the guy that is a specialist in that niche technology. Our two engineers are somewhat specialized. I mean, they have better skills in different area, and they can learn a new software and how it works, or a new technology very rapidly. So I wouldn't consider them as a specialist, but to develop an API, I would rather go to Ritesh than Arvin. And if I'm developing a customer fronting application, I'm more going to go to Arvin than Ritesh, who is very smart, but sometimes the most simple things he will not understand, right? But the guy is brilliant.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Maybe we can, as we close out and just introduce this, there's a bunch of, Stephanie's posted some things about contracting sources, which are great. And I want to, I'm not necessarily advocating for building, EB medicine India or doing that, but Renaud sort of explained this to us, and literally came in with a sort of a cost proposal on how to grow technology that Lucretia and I, the three of us, reviewed together to try to figure out. But I guess I'd put it in a dollar sense, like to do a month's worth of development work using this resource. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say this, but is costing us in the range of about $2,500 a month, let's say. If we contracted, for instance, there are a lot of firms that have been around, Renaud and the old SIPA, that were, contracting firms that you'd offshore projects to. You'd hire the firm, they'd engineer. There's some real risk to those, but it, you know, at that level, you were talking maybe, you know, $10,000 a month to hire a month's worth of labor because you had the overhead and the profits built in. So there is an advantage as long as you've got somebody who's knowledgeable about the situation and a structure in place. You can potentially get five people and solve the generalist question that Greg's mentioned, using this model much less expensively than you would if you, say, hired a contracting firm to build a new product for you. Is that, Renaud, am I butchering that too badly, or is that a fairly accurate statement?
It's a little more than 2,500. I'd say $5,000.
Yeah.
Which is still very cheap. Now, whatever you consider doing, I think it's very important that you have trust in the service provider. And also, if you decide to go via a more consulting route, that whoever you hire or company that you hire understands your industry and your needs, because otherwise they're going to develop something that may not fit, and you're going to lose time, money, and
I think that goes back to Matt's kind of question about about if you're doing the technology offshore, you definitely need constant communication so that everybody understands things. But increasingly, at least the strategy a lot of us are trying to use on this call is, if we want to develop something new, we need a way to fund it, which could be a customer-led project where you got your one or two lead customers who sign on and pay up front and fund the development of the software that you then license to others. And so you're trying to fit together all these moving pieces so you can compete against, you know, the big people in your market who, as Renaud just pointed out, have hundreds or thousands of programming engineers, you know, so that sort of thing. And well, I hope, go. Any final comments, Renaud?
Yeah, just before you do anything, you have to have a well-structured project. You need to know where your data is, what you want to develop, who is going to consume it, and have strong management onshore in order to oversee whatever you decide to offshore.
Yep. Well, I hope that since technology is, as we started at the beginning, it's with us, it's expensive, but I don't think we want to give up the field to our bigger competitors. And I think Renaud, you know, hopefully this has been helpful to all of you by outlining kind of a way to combine the advantages of the smaller company perspective, i.e. the nimbleness, you know, with you know, being able to do kind of world-class work, you know, and you know, looking bigger in the marketplace than we may be as far as actual numbers of employees on payroll. So hopefully this will germinate some ideas for all of you on the call today. So Renaud, thanks for sharing. You know, as always, it's been a joy working with you on this whole thing. Again, all of us are available as, you know, Renewed members, so easy to get, you know, keep in touch and that sort of stuff. And so I'll close by saying thanks to everyone, you know, everyone for the, you know, the Renewed experience, and all of you for sharing your thoughts and opinions on all of the strategic issues we're all struggling with. So it's nice to get together every once in a while with On the Offense and all the other Renewed events. So I look forward to seeing you all. Yeah, with that, good wishes to everyone. Here's to success. Kill the end of 2022, and we'll see you next month.